Ever heard the song "Money Makes the World Go Around"? Well, turns out it's especially true when talking about gymnastics. This is why Alexandra Kiroi-Bogatyreva hopes that her emotional gold medal in the Commonwealth Games would help start a conversation regarding the serious lack of funding for rhythmic gymnastics. Well, sounds like a pretty noble cause, and in this video, we'll be telling you all about how the gymnast hopes to reach this goal. First up, let's take a closer look at her emotional gold medal. Tearing up while receiving a medal isn't something out of the ordinary. We've seen several athletes shed a few tears when given this honor, but why was Alexandra's tearful gold different from others? Well, among many reasons. Perhaps the major one was the fact that she was finally able to accomplish what she had been working so hard for. Of course, seeing all her hard work amount to something must have been a pretty empowering feeling, which was probably why Alexandra was pretty tearful when she received her medal in the games. The Australian gymnast managed to snag a well-deserving gold medal during the 2022 Commonwealth Games club final, which took place at Arena Birmingham. Now, this was a major step up by Alexandra, after she'd managed to get bronze while competing in the all-around finals for individuals. She also took up a team silver during one of the events. But it was actually her gold medal that gained the most amount of attention. And it wasn't just because, well, it's a gold medal, but also because of what it stood for at that moment. The Australian gymnast made sure that everyone knew how powerful that moment was. She also managed to raise a cry for help and diverted attention to a rather important aspect of the sport: lack of funding. But what made Alexandra cry while receiving her medal? Well, according to the gymnast herself, the emotions just poured out of her when she won. She was probably working so hard during training and having to work even more to get the cash to afford actually competing. The 20-year-old mentioned that she trained about 8 to 10 hours a day, which sounds pretty impossible on its own, but imagine having to worry about the money on top of it. Alexandra was lucky enough to have her parents support her financially, so she didn't have to worry about finding side hustles to support her passion. But let's remind you, this isn't true for several other aspiring gymnasts who actually end up letting go of their passions due to financial constraints. Anyway, we're so glad that all her hard work actually paid off and that she got to take home numerous medals, including a gold. The journey from qualifying for the games to winding up where she did was psychologically difficult, according to the gymnast. Turns out that she had to remind herself from time to time that she was actually there because she truly enjoyed the sport. We can't even imagine how difficult it must have been for her. At just 20 years of age, Alexandra is now a 5-time Games medalist. This comes after she was able to get a team silver and bronze on the Gold Coast. Such a talented and skilled player definitely deserves her name to be among the all-time greats. But most importantly, Kiroi-Bogatyreva believes that her emotional journey will continue. After her tearful climax following a really tough routine of 3 days, the gymnast cried and cried a lot. Now, we discussed the reasons behind her crying, but let's also tell you this: it might not stop anytime soon. In fact, she believes she'll end up getting emotional every time she sees this medal. According to her, the only way she managed to get to this position was by financing herself almost 99% of the time. The star also mentioned that it didn't matter where she was participating, whether it was the World Championships, the World Cups, or even the leotards she'd be wearing during her performance. Alexandra even quoted the price for her leotards, which turns out to be $2,000 a piece. Wow, that's a lot. It's pretty sad that there aren't any proper authorities that would provide the layers with proper funding for such participation. The gymnast also acknowledged the sacrifices made by her parents, as she mentioned that all the expenses were borne by them. This definitely proves that success truly has a large number of sacrifices behind it. But in the end, the gymnast said that it was worth it. Now that's a happy ending we were all looking forward to. When talking about the financial burdens faced by gymnasts, the young athlete said that they've always tried to highlight the issue throughout their career, but it's never gotten the attention it deserves. The young player is hopeful that this gold medal would direct positive attention to this matter. Lastly, let's see what the Australian authorities are doing about this problem. Several athletes have raised their voices against the extreme underfunding that is faced in gymnastics. Many countries don't even consider this to be a real sport, which is very problematic, to be very honest. And the people who think this way, well, we'd like to see them perform such movements without any error. It's definitely going to be impossible for them, and also will teach them a lesson. Recently, the Australian government announced that they'd be investing an additional amount of $79.6 million over the next 2 years, on top of what the allotted amount is in the federal budget. Gymnastics Australia is also welcoming multiple packages of about $11 million in total that are specifically curated to encourage the development of women in sports from the grassroots level. Of course, the government needs to do much more in order to successfully promote the sport and encourage people to pursue it. Well, that's all we have for Alexandra and her emotional gold medal. Now let's catch you up on what else went down at the Commonwealth Games. Here are some other news items we think you'll find interesting. Starting with, what do we know of the 2026 Commonwealth Games? After a pretty successful closing ceremony of the Commonwealth Games 2022 at Birmingham, many eyes have turned in anticipation toward the next Games event. And with the fantastic spectacle that was this year's Games, the expectations for the next one are riding higher than Everest. But there's only a little we know about the upcoming event till now. The 2026 Commonwealth Games will be held in Australia, in the state of Victoria. This is the 23rd edition of the Games, and would mark the first time a region will actually host the Games instead of a city. The opening ceremony will, of course, be held in the provincial capital of Melbourne, but the events will take place around the state in regional areas such as Gippsland and Shepparton. Now, we can't wait to hear more about what's bound to happen in this amazing series of events. But of course, they have big shoes to fill in after the amazing success of the Games in Birmingham. Next, let's discuss the closing ceremony of the Games. Last week, the Commonwealth Games ceremony took place, and it goes without saying that the Games went out with a pretty audible bang. Whether it was the audience turnover or the performance of the athletes, everything was top-notch. But on top of all this, an excellent lineup at the closing ceremony made the Games even more popular. We're here to tell you who was invited to the closing event. First up, the ceremony kicked off with a performance by a Solihull band called Ocean Color Scene. After this, Birmingham's very own band Dexy's Midnight Runners ended up performing. The event was made even greater with a performance by UB40, which is considered to be one of the best bands of all time. Other highlights included Birmingham giving the baton to Victoria to host the next CWG Games. The ceremony even had a dance theater show, performing a sequence titled Peaky Blinders: The Redemption of Thomas Shelby. Now, we would have gone to the final day just to attend this. Apart from all the amazing performances, all the flag bearers and athletes from the 72 participating countries walked around the Alexander Stadium, which is always a pretty historic moment to witness. With all these amazing performances following a series of amazing events, Commonwealth Games 2022 has definitely stolen our hearts. Now, the expectations are way too high for Australia. Lastly, citizens of Birmingham raised their voices against the Games for their unsettling history. That's right, even the Commonwealth Games haven't been able to escape the hold of controversies. Well, this one seems to hold some amount of truth, as citizens of Birmingham called the Games out on being extremely discriminatory during an interview with The Guardian. They highlighted the fact that the Games are never held in smaller Commonwealth nations. Apart from this, the history of the Commonwealth isn't exactly great either, as Britain took its sweet time to finally embrace and accept other nations. And many countries still have to undergo this bias. The citizens also believe that the Games pride themselves on being diverse, but often neglect to mention what led them here. Well, they are indeed correct. That's a wrap for this video, guys. What did you think of Alexandra's tearful win? Do you think it would end up helping the gymnast community in any way? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more awesome videos like this.